All right, folks, back for another Saints training camp recap. Day 8, Friday, TGIF, out in Metairie, fans back in attendance. Before we break it down, let's make sure to give some love to Justin Burgess of BenPro for sponsoring today's show. Again, if you have a business that's in the greater New Orleans region, you need help with employee benefits or health insurance, please give him a call, 504-888-8038. He's helped a lot of people locally. He's going to be helping some really big people locally here soon. So thank him again for producing today's show and sponsoring today's show. All right, so we got a lot of fun stuff to talk about. Let's start with how the day transpired, right? So the first part of today is Cam Jordan getting his contract extension. So essentially, it's a 2-year contract extension worth up to $27.5 million. And so presumably that would take Cam into year 15. So he's in year 13 right now. So he's locked up for the next couple of seasons. And then after that, we'll see how it goes. But this gives him an opportunity and a chance to finish his career as a Saint, which is something very meaningful. His dad, Steve Jordan, played for the Vikings from, I think it was 82 to 94, if I'm not mistaken. It might be 81, but I'm pretty sure it's 82. But he played for the Vikings his whole entire career. Legend amongst the Minnesota Vikings fan base community, all those types of things. And Jordan, look, when it comes down to it, it'd be hard not to look at, he's obviously going to go in the Ring of Honor. He's the team's franchise all-time leading sack artist, has a chance to get into the top 20. By the time his career's over, he might be able to get into the top 15 all-time at sacks. Just depends on usage, all those types of things. So, look, it's super important. I think it's a great move. Cam's been a guy, again, I kind of pointed this out a little bit here and there, but no matter what the team is, nobody has a better pulse on this team than Cam Jordan, right? And when there is a loss or win, whether it's things aren't going well, Cam's always talking to us. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. He's obviously very honest. And I know some people say, well, 24-hour rule, that's all you see from him and stuff. But when he's in the locker room, he talks, he tells us all this stuff. So, look, I'm happy for this one. I don't think it's a bad deal. Look, he's playing extremely well. He's missed 2 games. One was due to COVID, and then the other was due to a orbital injury. And he said he was trying to push to play that week, but didn't work out for him. So, look, that's obviously the biggest news of the day. We'll get into training camp in a second, but the other one is Alvin Kamara. He talked to us after practice, but the judgment has been handed down by the NFL. It's a 3-game suspension, so he's going to miss the season opener against the Titans. He'll miss the second week against the Panthers, and then the third week against Green Bay. Those both are road trips. Panthers game is on Monday Night Football, and then he's eligible to return after week 3 after that game's over. So just some context on it. He can be in preseason practices and games, but once we get to the regular season, he cannot. So that's going to be interesting. Kendre Miller, Taysom Hill, and obviously Jamal Williams. If you're playing in a fantasy league, those are the guys you absolutely want to get and ride for the first few weeks. I'd lean more to Jamal Williams, possibly Taysom Hill for sure, but Kendre Miller is going to get his work in. And then if you're looking for an option beyond that, Benjamin and possibly Kirk Merritt would be the other guys I'd take a look at. But, look, Kamara hasn't talked to us in a long time. He said it afterwards. It's been about an 18, 19-month ordeal, and Kamara is usually one of the best locker room interviews. He's straight to the point. He's very insightful. He knows his stuff and then some. He also has a great pulse on this team, but obviously hasn't been talking to us and not talking about football and with this thing kind of just lingering, right? And so he spent 20 minutes with us after practice. He was making sure he answered all questions, right? And he would get pulled off. He's like, hey, it's time to go. We got other people to talk. And he's like, no, I answer these questions. So that's definitely appreciated. But just taking accountability and responsibility for his actions and just obviously talking about the incident. And, again, everything that he said, it's valid. I mean, you just got the elephant out, or address the elephant in the room. And now we can get back to football. The suspension's in place. Obviously, the Saints, they're going to keep on moving forward with everything. Again, when this first came out, personal conduct policy could have put him at 6 games. But 3 sounds like a pretty good deal to me. If from everything it looks like I've read and just seen or heard, it doesn't look like there's going to be any appeals process. So this is probably what's going to happen. Probably best case for all parties involved and such, but obviously very remorseful for his actions. all those types of things, which obviously goes a long way, and we can put this to bed. And so he just wants to focus on playing football. He's looked really good out there. Let's talk about practice. Probably the reason you came here, training camp. But, of course, Saints.media, si.com/NFL/Saints to get your full breakdown recap. This was a day probably a lot of people, if you talk to them, said there's not much going on. Somehow I ended up finding and recap a whole bunch of stuff. So, again, if you want to know all the details with all the stuff that happened, go over to Saints.media. Check out my full recap. We'll hit on some of the high points. First thing would be the attendance part of it. So you had guys return like Ryan Ramczyk and Bradley Roby. The team had a day off on Thursday, but they were back in the lineup. Same thing with Jimmy Graham as well. So that was obviously the first good thing to see. You had guys leave practice early like Alontae Taylor and Calvin Throckmorton. Taylor was out there. Throckmorton was not. So you had Michael Thomas, veteran rest day. Cam Jordan, not there, veteran rest day, of course, deservedly so. James Hurst wasn't there, but I did see him, around the facility and stuff. That's not an injury related, from my understanding. It should be a veteran rest day. The two that are really concerning, I guess, or the ones that you want to talk about is Andres Pete and Calvin Throckmorton. Throckmorton left with an elbow injury the other day at practice. Pete is dealing with a strained quad. So not good news. It's a concern. The offensive line, I think that was probably the biggest question mark in some aspects. I think the defensive line is going to be fine. Linebacker, guys behind Pete Werner and Demario Davis still have me a little bit concerned. But the offensive line, I've said it before. I'll say it again. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And we're already seeing these pile up during camp. So Throckmorton, hopefully he's okay. That's something to pay attention to. Andres Pete, again, we know he's never played a full season. This is just kind of the facts and where the things are right now, right? And so, look, the offensive line today, if it was to be today, Trevor Penning, James Hurst at left guard if Pete's out, McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, and then Ryan Ramczyk. I'm not worried about from McCoy onto the right side. I'm worried about that left side. Now, one of the things I also want to pass along, kind of jumping all over the place, but Trevor Penning talked to us after practice, and I know a lot of people said this guy's just injury prone, all this other stuff. One of the things he said after practice, I just want to touch on because I tweeted it out and such, but he said that these were just more for bad luck because if you remember his first injury with the turf, his toe got caught in the turf. So that's what happened in the first one. And the second one was after the play, just one of those fluke things. He said he didn't remember what it was, but he is working on some of his footing, some technique, and a few things just to help along the process, but really just chalked it up to bad luck. And so hopefully that's the case because this team needs Trevor Penning. He's definitely working in pass protection. That's where his kind of weaker part of his game is right now. But he told us he's looked pretty good in pass pro. I had him charted a couple times going up against Carl Granderson and Isaiah Foskey. He looked really solid in his pass protection reps. So I'm glad to see some of those evolve a little bit there. But, it's one of those things where there's a legitimate concern on this offensive line and what things look like in week one and how is the durability and what's the plan for the season, right? And so Landon Young got, starting reps at left guard today. And if you've been reading my recaps, this is not new information, but he has been working in guard positions. Nick Saldivari is running the second team left guard position. You still have Lewis Kidd, who has been playing at tackle. He's been playing a lot of different tackle positions. So Throckmorton was a big piece of the offensive line depth. They brought in Trey Turner. They brought in a couple of guys now. So it's just one of those things where now it seems like it's a revolving door at this point. Hopefully they can get healthy. Hopefully come together. Hopefully Nick Saldivari can come along pretty quickly because they're going to need him at some point this year if all this continues to happen, right? But, look, overall, I wrote down a lot of observations, some other things to point out. So the Saints did mostly a traditional base 4-3, but then they rolled in where they had an extra DB and they were in and had slot guy, which is Bradley Roby. And so basically, 3-man rush, Demario's at linebacker. So Jordan Howden has been that guy that's the extra defensive back in that package. Now we'll see if that plays out and continues to happen, but good sign for him. He's somebody that kind of flashed in minicamp a little bit and obviously some in OTAs, but with contact, it's one of those that you want to see more. He said before a long time ago that he'll play any position. He's done all those positions. He'll play special teams. I think he's just one of those blue collar type of workers, blue chip workers, whatever you want to refer to him as, that just does the work. and can do a good job. So real good sign for him. As far as practice goes, just to hit on things, obviously John Gruden was there. That was a big thing. He's in a consulting capacity, similar to what he was before. And so he's in for the next few days. Again, same thing. They've done this before. They brought in guys like Mike Martz to the table. They brought in some of these guys, that used to be these big offensive gurus or things. Mike Martz was brought in to help usage with Alvin Kamara. So Gruden here to help with Derek Carr a little bit. And so he's obviously here for the next few days. He's not on staff. So I know people are going to tend to be like, oh, John Gruden's on the staff and stuff. So park the brakes a little bit, pump the brakes, if you will, whatever you want to call it that way. Just something to keep an eye on just as we progress through that. Something else that I've noticed is the Saints using more of a two running back set. So I pointed out a couple things as far as what we've seen, what we haven't seen. We've seen Rashid Shaheed out of the backfield. We've seen Alvin Kamara work with the wide receivers, but more of a two running back setup. And today you saw something simple was like Kamara's running an angle route, going angle towards the middle, and then Jamal Williams also on the field running towards the flats. The Saints running backs, this is a more talented group to be able to run a two-back set, I think, in a lot of ways. And so I'm really excited to see that prospect develop. So that was definitely one thing. Look, I think 7-on-7s, again, if you want all the details, be sure to check out all my recaps. Just kind of talk about maybe some plays of the day or just guys that might be stood out. Kamara was one when we're doing 7-on-7. Look, they pick on Zach Bond a good bit, and Bond's probably not there as a pass defender, not yet. I mean, not to where he's like, these guys got it, he's solid. But I do like some of the things I've seen from him as far as positioning and just being able to pursue and all those types of things. But this one just got torched by Alvin Kamara. And the thing is, it was a wheel route, huge hookup downfield. I don't know many people that when it's peak Alvin Kamara that's going to be able to defend that. Perfectly thrown ball by Derek Carr, perfect execution, might have went for a touchdown. If not, it was a big gain. You put Kamara on a lot of guys, it's going to be a mismatch. So I'm interested to see how that kind of plays out during the year. Other things, look, I think the run defense, the defense in general has had a really good day overall. Offense struggled a little bit today. There was a few things, a little bit of drops. There's still a little bit of just, I don't know. I don't want to say the tempo was off, but a little bit more runs. So you got a lot of more tackle for losses and just other things that kind of worked out in that advantage, if you will. And so, look, I think the overall practice, it was a heater. They've changed the format. So they, started inside, then they come out about 10, stay about an hour, maybe a little bit over. And that's just going to be the format for fans who are in attendance on Saturday and Sunday. Just kind of looking up, look, you're going to hear a lot about guys like Lynn Bowden Jr. He was a guy that flashed at practice today. One of the vets they brought in, a guy from Kentucky, can return punts. He's one that made a couple plays today. He's somebody that, I've talked about this wide receiver battle and just kind of put a bow on some of this stuff that we've talked about. But the wide receiver battle is totally up for grabs. After Michael Thomas and Rashid Shaheed and obviously for, Chris Olave, 4, 5, and 6, if they keep 6 receivers, is really up for grabs. And I made the comment, I said, if anybody is going to step up to the table, they need to do it soon, right? Because if the starting roster was assembled today, it's Traquan, and then I put Keith Kirkwood there. And then wide receiver 6, it's a toss-up because I think A.T. Perry, he has promise, been a little bit inconsistent. The thing I like about Perry, and I put on a hit on this in some of the other mini camps and OTAs and stuff, is that he'll rebound pretty quickly. So it's off and on with him sometimes. James Washington, sometimes we see some things, not a lot that stands out. Or Brian Edwards, same thing. He had a bad day the other day. And so, I think 4, 5, and 6 is so up for grabs. But right now, the edge is to Traquan Smith and Keith Kirkwood because they're vets. They look pretty good. Traquan does a lot of the dirty work, all that type of stuff. So, again, something that we're going to have to pay attention to. And then lastly, just kind of talk a little bit about it. But with the kicking battle, so we got to see Blake Gillikin and Will Lutz today. Lutz went 5 of 7. He missed 2 kicks. He missed his second kick in the first set. So he did 3, and then he did 5 kicks. So his second one which was right after extra point, about 41 yards, I would say. Maybe it's in that long 39 to 41 yard range. Kick hits the right upright, no good. And then in his second attempts, when he did those 5, the first kick was just wide right, extra point. I get it happens, but and I point out Lou Headley was holding, so it's normally Gillikin, so I know they're going to fill it out. I don't want to get people thinking just because he misses a kick in practice, him or Blake Groupie, that means he's out of a job. I think Will Lutz, again, tie goes to the runner. It's got to be Lutz today. It's got to be Gillikin. These guys, Headley and Groupie, are going to have to bring something a little bit extra, and I think this is going to come down to preseason. So a lot of good stuff from Saints practice. We've got Saturday, we've got Sunday and Monday, and then we're off on Tuesday. And then before you know it, first preseason game's almost here. So we'll have plenty more to break down. Again, Saints.media for all the latest and greatest from training camp. Me and Ross Jackson are at there every day and getting you stuff as it comes. All observations and interviews on our video side, all the recaps. Thanks for your support. We really appreciate it. Also, shout out to Justin Burgess at BenPro for sponsoring today's show. Thanks, guys. We'll be talking very soon.